Well, it's Friday night, news night. I'm Dave, welcome to Dave Takes It On. We open with Apple, their long-awaited EV entry into the market. Now, this was first announced way back in 2016, and it was announced as they're going to be coming in, they're going to be a Tesla beta, they're going to have fully automated cars because they're the masters of software, they do the best designs in the world, and it was delayed, nothing happened. Negotiations were entered into with a number of EV manufacturers and other companies, and one by one they all dropped by the wayside. And then it was announced that 2025 they'd have their new car out. It would be fully self-driving and beat everything on the road today. And well, back to today, yet another delay. That car, it's still happening apparently. But they're now saying, oh, it's going to be possibly 2028. Now, that's not a good time. You see, I've often said that the legacy auto will eventually get their EVs sorted out and they will get back into the market. They're going to have to, because ICE cars are dead already. And they're coming in. The Chinese are coming in. The Japanese are coming in. And Apple will launch into that sort of market. It's not the best time for them. Now, at the same time, not only is it delayed, they've also announced they can't get full self-driving working. And this is quite an admission for someone like Apple. But it does follow a string of other companies like Cruise who've already admitted they've just given up on it. It is too difficult. So, the new Apple car potentially could be out in 2028. Potentially could be probably one of the best designs that you've ever seen. They have the potential to do that, and they do make fantastic looking products, but it will now likely only be level 2 autonomy. And level 2 means, well, adaptive cruise control, automatic lane keeping, possibly automatic lane change. That's about it. So, hardly the launch that they were hoping for. Well, Tesla's just released a load of figures about superchargers, and it's really quite interesting to see all the data. Well, the first thing they say is that they've now got 4 million Teslas on the road, and between them they have covered 80 billion miles. Now, just going back to FSD and Apple, Tesla have 80 billion miles worth of recorded data because they monitor every single car. How does anyone, particularly a non-EV company like Apple, cope with that and try and meet up to that level? Anyway, so 80 billion miles in total. So they've worked out it's an average of 20,000 miles per car. And they do state that that applies to cars 1 day old and 15 days old. They say that an average car does 30 miles per day. That fits very much in with figures I've been quoting. And they state that people charge their cars every 65 miles. Now, that is a really interesting figure because it means that people do not use the full range. Now, these are averages. Some people will, most won't. What it means is that a typical Tesla will have a real-world range, even in the depths of winter, of about 100, 150 miles, probably well over 200, but people just don't use it. In the summer, these cars are capable of the best part of 400 miles on a single charge. Yet, everyone charges, on average, every 65 miles. So, it confirms most people don't charge every day. It also states that most chargers, superchargers, are coping perfectly well. The average time is now running down towards 25 minutes for a charging session. Again, these are fascinating figures. We don't charge every day. People top up every 65 miles and the average time people spend at a supercharger is 25 minutes. And they do state that while there definitely are peaks and troughs, the vast majority of chargers do not use more than about 4 hours per day. So once again, I've done many videos on this. If you don't like queuing up to charge, change the time you go to your charger, because there are peak times and they're different at all chargers. If you go at any other time, you are likely to find most superchargers are totally empty. Well, just sticking with Tesla for a moment, they've just announced the launch of the Model 2. This is now officially called Redwood, and it is proposed now for official launch and supply in 2025. Now, I did predict that this would come out at the end of 24, November or December. I'm still sticking with that. I think, a bit like the Cybertruck, they will announce it, do the official launch just before the end of the year, but no immediate deliveries. And then they'll spend the next month or so ramping up, and the first actual deliveries, I believe, are going to be a bit earlier, about February or March. Do have to say, I'll probably be wrong, because Elon is one of the few people who, if the launch is not ready, just cancels it. He will not launch if everything is not ready for it. So we could have a situation where it's not launched until the end of 2025. I'm still sticking with, I think they'll do a launch at the very end of 2024, and deliveries will commence first quarter 2025. Anyway, just getting on to the price. If it is £25,000 or dollars or euros, they're all much the same these days, then it's a real game changer. You see, up until recently, the world's best-selling car was the Toyota Corolla, and that was selling in the £25,000 range. The Model Y came along and beat it, but the Model Y averages £50,000 euros per sale. So it is absolutely stunning that a car costing twice the price of the previous champion has made it to number one around the world. Now, any bets if the Model Y was that popular, how popular a $25,000 or even $30,000 car is going to be? I suggest this is going to be a world market changer. This is going to be dramatic. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see. Well, looking next into the grid, lots of negative people out there saying the grid can't cope and what's it doing. Tesla's just announced its results for 2023, and this shows that its battery storage, the megapacks, which were really the forerunner of all battery grid-connected battery storage, they're dramatically up, and for the first time they're showing as a separate profit item, and they're showing up on their quarterly and annual returns, and they're showing that it is a very, very significant part of their business. You see, these things cost about £1 million a unit. People have 10, 20, 30, 40 units at a time. This is massive, massive business. And while not everyone wants an EV, not everyone can afford an EV, everybody needs energy. And Tesla and others are being... and Tesla and a load of other companies around the world are finding a huge increase in demand. You see, instead of generating your own electricity, what you do is you let someone else generate it and then you just store it. It's a fantastic industry. Not only that, but there are times in all grids when they are producing more electricity than is being used. Now, on these occasions, something has to shut down. And recently that has been wind farms and solar farms. And they've been told, switch them off, we don't need them, and they lose money. Now, at these times, if you are able to store energy, You can get that energy really cheap, and on many occasions, the price of electricity goes negative. What this means, quite simply, they will pay you to take it. Why would they do that? Well, if they have to shut the solar farm down, they lose money, they lose everything. If, on the other hand, they can sell it you at a loss, they're still making an income from it. So it's very attractive to the solar farms and the wind farms, particularly at peak times. So this has now become a boom industry. So people are building these massive grid-connected batteries, they're storing it, huge amount of development going into the type of batteries. At the moment, we're using lithium-ion batteries, and they are much better suited to things like mobile phones, cameras, and EVs. They give very high energy density. In other words, they're quite small for the amount of power they hold. But that's not needed in grid-connected battery storage. Grid-connected battery storage, you've got oodles of space. You can make batteries as big as you want. Really doesn't matter. So they're looking at different structures now. They're looking at solid state, they're looking at sodium-ion batteries, and there's several other developments going on. And they're not just happening around the world, they're happening here in the UK. We're showing here some examples of UK storage examples. National Grid itself says it's big on storage of electricity. It balances out the supply, it makes their jobs easier. We in the UK have several very, very large installations going in, and these include massive solar panel farms, massive wind farms, and equally massive grid-connected batteries. Watch out, this is a boom industry, and it's going to change the way the grid works. Well, still with Tesla, they just announced last year that they sold 1.8 million cars. That's fine. But of those, 1.6 million were to totally new buyers. A lot of people suggested that, well, the early adopters, they'll just be buying again, and that will distort the figures. However, what Tesla's just released is that out of 1.8 million cars, 1.6 million of those were sold to someone totally new. And what that is what is called organic growth. It's not people just rebuying the same product, the latest model, over and over again, as happens with most cars. This is totally new people buying their first EV and making it a Tesla. So this is organic growth, and it really shows the state of health of the EV new sales market. Tesla is attracting new customers, and would anybody like to guess where those customers have come from? I'm not even going to say it. Okay, now almost all new sales of EVs offer some sort of special deal. Tesla don't. But what owners get, they can get free charging, or they can get free membership, so they get a discount on chargers. They can get special deals. They can get free chargers installed at home. They can even get free electricity for a year at home. There are so many deals on the market, and they're just happening all the time. So these deals are out there, and people really need to start using them. Now, I know in some cases, for example, Hyundai, a lot of their deals work through Ionity. And Ionity only have, I don't know what it is, 60, 70, 80 stations throughout the whole of the UK. So it's quite possible if you buy your first Hyundai Ioniq 5 or 6 that you're actually not within range of an Ionity charging station. So these memberships, hardly worth it. My brother over in the States, we'll be getting reports from him on his car. He just before Christmas bought a BMW iX50, and that one comes with 2 years totally free charging. It is limited. What it is you can only charge for up to 30 minutes at a time. And this is obviously designed to stop all the BMWs just queuing up and charging until they reach 100% and blocking out the chargers for people who are prepared to pay the full price. Anyway, what he gets is if he charges up to 30 minutes in a session, it's totally free of charge. He believes if he goes over the 30 minutes, he might pay for the whole charging structure. So the message here is, look at your free deals. So Andrew over in the States, he's just had a home charger installed. Now, if he's got any sense at all, he won't use that for the remainder of the 2 years he gets free charging. Well, it's great and handy to be able to charge your car at home. If you can get free charging 20 minutes down the road, then they should be doing that. Now, he did send me a WhatsApp recently about one of his charging sessions. Now, he's brand new to EV charging, brand new to BMW iX Model 50, but he's already amazed. He said it's such a social event going and charging. You talk to other people. He also said it was very much a number of chargers were out of use, just couldn't use them. So the number on offer was totally limited. But he's given me some statistics about his charging sessions, and it's all looking good for him. So he probably won't use his home charger for a little while. If he's got any sense, just nip out, have a cup of coffee and do you for 30 minutes free. But he's ready now for when that offer runs out. So if you're buying a new one, it might be worth checking some of the offers before you actually make your final decision. If you could get 2 years absolute free charging in the UK, that's quite a lot of money. Even EVs that are cheap, but that's still quite a lot of money to be able to drive around for 2 years totally free of charge. Look out for the offers. Well, over in the States, General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, load of others, the dealers all got together and said, well, we just don't want EVs. They're proven to be unpopular, they're unreliable, subject to massive recalls, they are inferior to other cars, I'm naming specifically Teslas, and hugely, hugely expensive. Now, this was my argument all along. I did question why anyone would buy a Mustang Mach-E for $50,000 or $60,000 when they can go and get a petrol V8 version for about $30,000. Now, the EV is a better car. I'm a great fan of it. I think it's a lovely car. It's actually got better performance. And believe it or not, the EV has got a longer range than the petrol V8 version has, if you multiply the average mileage you get with the size of the fuel tank. But do General Motors and Ford and Stellantis honestly believe that you can just double your price? Oh, it's an EV, it's double the price, and people will buy it. Now, I can pretty much guarantee that if they launch that Mustang Mach-E for $30,000, exactly the same price as the V8 version, a number of those motorists would choose the EV. Now, it's logical. The V8 version does about, I think it's 24 miles to the gallon. That must cost a fortune to run it. If you can charge your car at home or even get free charging, you're going to be able to run your Mustang Mach-E for a fraction of that price. So not all of them. There's a load of petrol heads out there, a load of EV deniers. All those, you'll never convert those. But there would be a good number of people who would definitely go for the EV version. The same applies over here. I keep on quoting the Vauxhall Astra. Vauxhall Astra is £40,000 for the EV version, yet the petrol version starts at £23,000. Do they honestly believe that people will just pay double for exactly the same car? It is the same chassis, it is the same body, you get the same seats, you get the same pretty much everything, apart from you get an LED screen on the dashboard and you get a battery under the floor or wherever they hide it, and you get an electric motor instead of a petrol one. And until EVs get down into the £15,000, £20,000, £25,000 euro range, they're not going to make massive inroads into the petrol market. Amazon is now committed to EVs. They did a deal a long time ago with Rivian. Rivian make the R1S or RS1 and the RT1 or 1T. And they also did a deal to make delivery vans for Amazon, Jeff Bezos. And those vans have been quietly being delivered in the background. They started receiving them middle of last year, just a few, and delivery has been ramping up steadily. So a lot of drivers in the US are now seeing and getting hold of Rivian delivery vans, badged up with Amazon, obviously. Now, in the UK, we see a similar thing. Amazon over here haven't got a deal with Rivian or anyone else. They buy the Ford Transit EVs. And so we see Amazon vans that are broadly advertised with 100% renewable energy, pollution-free and everything else. And drivers I've spoken to really like them. Well, over in America, a number of people have gone out and interviewed the Rivian drivers for Amazon. And all of them absolutely love driving them. Now, I can understand, you see, a while ago, I used to be let's say the equivalent of a door-to-door salesman. I wasn't, but that's the sort of thing I was. So I was in and out of my car all the time, drive somewhere, knock on a couple of doors, drive somewhere else, knock on the door. And every time I got out, I had to find my key, press the key to lock it, walk over to the house, knock on the door, nobody in, walk back to the car, get the key out, unlock it, get in, put the key in the ignition, start it, handbrake off, set off driving, might only be the next street, and then off again. I'd have handbrake on, turn the engine off, that was a pain to me. And it didn't come home to me just how good EVs are, because my particular car, I'm sure many are exactly the same, when I stop, if I open the door, the car puts itself into park and it puts the handbrake on. That's it. I don't have to do anything. There's no key. Most Teslas are operated through their phones, so I don't have to find a key. And most EVs, when you set them up in the first place, they have an option for lock on departure. So when I get out of the car and shut the door and walk away, the car locks. Now, if you have to do this 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 times a day, it's a huge difference, a huge difference. Now, not only that, in the winter, you can actually set your heating to stay on. So when you get out of your car, you go and do an Amazon delivery, your heating stays on. So when you get back, well, the first thing you'll find is when you walk towards it, the car unlocks, the van. So you can just jump straight in it, no fumbling for a key. You don't have to put a key in anything. As soon as you sit down, the car detects that you're there and switches the car on. It unlocks it and it takes off the handbrake, but it's nice and warm. So these EV drivers over there with the Rivian delivery vans for Amazon, they love them. And this is one of the things that people just don't realise about EVs. They are very different, and some of the differences don't worry much to some people, but they really do to others. Still sticking with the States, the US Postal Service has now gone over to EV 100%. Now, a little while ago, about a year, 18 months ago, they announced a very, very lacklustre EV programme. They really didn't want them. They were happy buying what they did. They really loved what they were doing. And whoever was in charge really had a thing against EVs. So they set a target of something like 20% of their vans will be EVs by 2035. Absolutely ludicrous. They were taken to court. There was a group got together complaining about pollution of government vehicles. Now, the government is supposed to work in our interest. And the US Postal Service has the most number of government vehicles of anyone alongside the US Army. So they were taken to court, and the court ruled that the US Postal Service must do more to protect the environment and its drivers and the general public. And they've now relaunched, in effect, and they're going 100% EVs. They've announced that they're going to be all EVs in all branches, and it's now around about 2030, I think, for a total transformation. They're chasing big numbers of EVs, and once again, I think you'll find that the drivers, once they start driving them and realise the advantages, the warmth, the automatic locking, unlocking, automatic handbrake, no gears, no clutch, these are so simple and comfortable to drive. I'm sure a lot of other people will just start changing over to EV. was CES, Consumer Electronics Show, just happened over in America, and it's amazing what's going on there. One of the big surprises was Honda, and it was there big time with concept cars, and it's now announced it's taking EVs very seriously, but also very differently. And I really do think they're onto something here. See, they've got a new car coming out. Their early attempts failed. They were what they call now 3-box cars. That is, you've got a bonnet, you've got a boot, and you've got a passenger bit in the middle. They were never very popular, never very good. It was really a token gesture, and they didn't sell very well. And they've actually now withdrawn them. But what they've done is they've just announced 2 things. The first one is a new platform. And there's a $40 billion investment going into this. And the platforms are important because, in effect, what you do is you produce a chassis, battery motors, wheels, everything else. But that's it. And then on top of that, you can put different bodies. So in theory, you could put a van. You could put a minibus. You could put a sports car. You could put a SUV. Doesn't matter. Once you've got the platform, it's just bolting on a new body. So that's one of their moves. But the other one is the new concept. And what they've looked at is, why do we drive around in 2-ton cars with just one of us in the car? They had a look at common EVs. They call them the 3-box ones, as I said. And they've also looked at Aptera. Now, for those of you who don't know, Aptera is a little 3-wheeler. Seems to be going quite well, although they're struggling financially at the moment. But what Aptera has done, and what Honda is backing as well, is to say, we don't need 5, 6, 7-seater cars if it's just you and I driving down to the shops or commuting to work backwards and forwards. We could quite happily do, in many cases, with a 1 or a 2-seater. So they're looking to get the size of the cars down. They're also looking at the latest exotic materials, things like carbon fibre, to get the weight of the cars down. Now, once you get the size down, then the weight comes down automatically. But if you change the materials, you can get the weight down really dramatically. And what these 2 will allow is a much smaller battery that also gets the weight down. And what it does is it gives you much greater range on a smaller battery. But also, just realise that if, like Tesla says, you're only going to do 65 miles before you charge it, you really don't need a big battery at all. So they can make really small, really light, small battery cars, really quite nippy, park anywhere, and they will be much cheaper in price. We're back to price again. You've got to make them cheap. And so Honda, I think, are now a bit late in the day, but they are now actually looking at the market seriously, seeing what the market wants. In their case, they're trying to start up their own market. In other words, these high quality but very lightweight and small cars. I wish them all the best, and we should see the efforts in about 2025 or 2026, within a couple of years. Okay, still sticking with the Consumer Electronics Show. This year, besides Honda being there and a few others, it was very heavily biased towards AI, artificial intelligence, and robotics. These are the future. Now, the 2 actually go hand in hand, because if you can make a humanoid robot with AI, the sky's the limit. You see, Tesla recently showed off their Optimus robot, and it has very dexterous hands and fingers. It is almost human-like. And when he was asked why he made robots look like humans, Elon replied quite simply, the whole world is designed to be friendly to humans. Look at telephones, you press buttons. Look at doors, they have handles. Everything is designed for a human. Pans have handles, kettles have handles. These are all designed for human hands. Stairs are designed so that we can walk up and down them comfortably. If everything in the world today is designed for the humans, then it makes absolute sense for making robots which are humanoid, because then they can mimic everything that a human can do. Now, why is this important? Well, if you imagine a human worker on a production line, he's just doing repetitive tasks day in, day out, exactly the same task. Every time an object passes in front of him, he bolts something on or takes something off or tightens it or loosens it, whatever it is. It's a very boring, repetitive job. Now, a humanoid robot can just take that over. And financially, there's a huge incentive for that. Because to get 24-hour production, which a lot of factories work at these days, you'd need 3 humans, Monday to Friday, and then you'd need another 3 or 4 to cover at weekends. So there's an awful lot that a robot can do that is just repetitive. It's not difficult. And so if these take over a one-off cost to buy your robot, and even if they charge a monthly fee for the software or upgrades or whatever the license is, it will be much, much, much cheaper than humans. It will also be far more reliable. You see, a robot doesn't need to go to the toilet, doesn't need a lunch break, doesn't even actually need a warm factory. A robot can work in freezing temperatures. They can save on heating. So robots, and humanoid robots in particular, they are the way forward. Now I know there are a lot of competitors in this field because it's such a huge field. In effect, all robots could one day overtake all of the tedious and monotonous and dangerous tasks that humans undertake at the moment. Imagine, for example, in one of my jobs, I was an HVAC engineer working up at Sellafield. This is a nuclear power station in Cumbria. Imagine now you can send a robot in there. Well, the robot never ever needs to come out. He can get as radioactive as he wants. Doesn't affect him. He can wander around that plant. He could probably walk into the reactor itself. I don't know how the nuclear radiation affects electronics, but I know that's a silly exaggeration. But certainly a robot could wander around the factory doing repetitive things like servicing air conditioning units or repairing electrical faults. And you would save all of that low-level radioactive waste. AI is big on the scene. We've already seen it, ChatGPT and GPT-4, it's up to now, I think, and others. And we're already experiencing this. If you ring someone up, a company, it's 99% certain the robot's going to answer it. And it's probably nowadays going to be an AI. And it will just ask you questions. You can talk to it as if it was a human, and it will sometimes send you through to the right department. But this is taking over. The day of receptionists, I'm not sure how many factories and companies still have receptionists these days. Anyway, these are the 2 big ones for the future. They'll dramatically change society, and they were very much in evidence at the Consumer Electronics Show that was held recently. Now, there's so much talk about new batteries coming out all the time. There's everything being talked about, and some of them will never see the light of day. Many of them will never get up into mass production, even though they work. Some of them will. And the one that's looking a bit promising at the moment is sodium-ion batteries. Ion is I-O-N, not iron as in ironing or metal. Anyway, so these are sodium-ion batteries, and they have a number of advantages. First of all, they do not use cobalt or nickel at all. So the common complaint about EV batteries is, well, it's kids in Democratic Republic of Congo digging cobalt out of the ground with the bare hands, slave labour, etc., etc. These new batteries don't use cobalt or nickel at all. The other main advantage is there's no lithium. The lithium is replaced with sodium. And what that means is that every country in the world has sodium available. If you go to the coast, you can look at the sea. Sea is full of sodium chloride. It's sodium in a usable form. But it's also in the land as well. You can mine it. So this means that we don't need to go to China for our lithium. We don't need to go to the DRC for our cobalt and nickel. These batteries now are going to be made at home, wherever that home is. There's sodium in the ground in America, there's sodium in the ground in Canada, there's sodium in the ground in Germany, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. Every country in the world has sodium. It's also very much cheaper. If you buy lithium at the moment, it's currently running about $40,000 or $50,000 per tonne. Sodium is currently running at $350 per tonne. So it is cheaper, it's readily available. One disadvantage, it doesn't have the same energy density as lithium. What that means is you get less power out of it for the same size battery. Now, this is not a problem, particularly if you look at grid storage. Space is really not an option. Just put twice as many in and you get more than the amount of power out you need. Space doesn't matter, but with a car it actually does, and particularly weight. So these sodium batteries, they're not really suited to long distance reps on the road who need a good long range, and they need a very fast rapid charge when they stop. However, they are absolutely ideal when you're looking at the new trend. I'm going to cover this in a second, but the new trend is towards smaller cars. And in China, they've just launched the first 2 production cars, which are running on sodium-ion batteries, 100%. We're never going to get them over here. We never want them over here. That's a different subject altogether. But they've got a Yahweh 3, and that one is being launched. It's a little super mini, as we used to call them over here. It's a little super mini. It's a 100% EV, and that's £10,000. And there's another one which is retailing at $8,000. So what you have is these little tiny cars, 2-seaters, some of them even 4-seaters. They don't need a range. Go back to the Tesla report. We only do 65 miles on average in a Tesla before we recharge it. Do the same with these, and you don't need a battery that does more than 100 miles. That's a tiny little battery. Get home, plug it into your 3-pin plug at home, and it'll be ready in the morning. These are great. So they have tiny little batteries, which is cheaper. They have sodium-ion batteries, which has no lithium from China, no cobalt, no nickel. And they're getting about 4 miles per kilowatt hour. And they're very cheap. They're lightweight. So round town, which is where these are planned to be used, wind resistance is really not an issue. So when you're doing 70 miles an hour down the motorway, drag is an absolutely major factor. And this is why so many cars have a top speed in the 100, 150 range, and 200 mile is very rare. It's because if you double your speed, you don't double the drag, you quadruple it. And at some point, around about 100, 150, 200 miles an hour, the drag is greater than the power your engine produces, and you cannot go faster. That's why you have a top speed. You just can't go any faster. Keep your foot flat down, have a road as long as you want. Your top speed is your top speed. It's when your drag equals the power available. That's it. But around town, drag, if you're only going up to 20, 30 mile an hour, drag's negligible at that range. So you can get away with really practical shape and size vehicles. So cars could be quite easily 2-seaters. For many people, they don't have children, or the children are grown up and moved away, and so a 2-seater could be ideal. As long as you've got enough space for a bit of shopping or a suitcase if you're going away, that's all you need. So under the scenes, behind the scenes, there's a big movement going on which is looking at, can we go back to really tiny little cars? People are saying, what do you mean go back? Well, this trend started a long, long time ago. See, back in the 60s and 70s, we had things like Reliant Robins. We had Bond Bugs. We had bubble cars. We had the Sinclair C5. Now, at the time, with the exception of Reliant Robins, these never caught on. But the concept was there. If you're just going to the shops or just going to work, you don't need a 2-ton car. Just get yourself a little car, really economical, really cheap to run, and you can make do with that. Now, if you do have a big family, most big families nowadays have 2 cars. So I don't see any reason why the second car could not be a little tiny one, just used for commuting or for shopping or whatever it is. So we might be seeing quite a revolution in car design. They were showing some examples here of some new cars that are coming out, which are adapting this particular strategy. And some of them are a bit weird and wacky. A couple of them look like the old bubble car I was seeing in 1960s. A couple of them looking like the Reliant Robins. But they're all got one thing in common. They're going to be very, 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 very cheap. In Europe, the Citroën Ami, that one is on sale, I think, at €8,000. It's really not very dear. And so what we might be seeing is the start of a super, super small size car coming in, and they're not for everyone. They may not be for an awful lot of people, but there will be a market for them. Makes parking easy if you can park head on to the curb instead of having to wait for a space. Interesting. We'll look at EV charging. Huge amount happened last year. I produced video after video showing not all, many of the new installations going in. GridServe was installing like it was going out of fashion after having got the £500 million investment. Osprey, Fastned, Ionity, everyone was increasing the charging. Sainsbury's have announced that they're introducing rapid charging at the supermarkets. But last year as a whole was a disaster for on-street parking. Now, in late 2022, the government announced there would be a special grant available to all councils for promoting street side parking. So this is lamppost chargers and charging posts at the curb. Nothing was spent last year. The government missed their target. 2/3 of all councils have zero, none. They've not spent a penny on chargers on the streets. That's criminal. The motorways were not an awful lot better. I think about 1/3 of the motorway services ended up. They had a target of 6 rapid chargers at each motorway services, and about 1/4 of all the services don't have anything at all. A couple have just a couple of really old, probably broken 50 kilowatts, and that's it. So what's happening now? In September last year, they gave it a bit of a revamp. They got in touch with all the councils. They told them there's a £6 billion fund, and they have to spend it on installing street side charging. So there's been a massive uptake already. You're not going to see the chargers yet. Councils don't work that fast. The first thing is they apply for funding, and a lot of councils, West Midlands is one of them, has just got a multi-million-pound grant towards supplying charging for the public on the streets. So how does it work? Well, what the council will now do, having got the funds, so they don't have to spend any money themselves, and they can't spend these funds on anything else, they will now be going out to tender to the charger suppliers like Pod Point and Genie Point, and they'll be asking them to provide quotes. Being a council, they have to be fair, they have to go out, get at least 3 quotes and pick the most competitive one. So that's what they're going through at the moment. And once they go through that, they're then going to start looking at planning permission. Now, being a council, can't see that's going to take a long time. But then after that, they've got to look at the power, getting the electricity to them. So it's not going to happen straight away. We're not going to see any difference in the first quarter of this year. But towards the end of the year, these are going to be going in absolutely massive numbers. And when they do, it's going to answer one of the problems that everyone's got, which is, if I can't charge at home, where do I charge? Once these start going in, provided the councils don't try and rip everyone off, charge a sensible price, then these will become very popular for people who just can't charge at home. But even them, they should be aware of the Tesla survey. Most people charge not every day, but a few times a week. And most people recharge once they've done about 65 miles. So you don't have to every night drive around looking for one of these chargers that's free and plug in every night. Don't do it. Once a week or twice a week, whatever it is, do it, leave your car somewhere overnight. But the rest of the time, just park outside your house at home. So that's something to look forward to. If we put that in conjunction with the drive on rapid and ultra-rapid charger expansion. They're aiming for 300,000 of those by 2030. Then 2024 is going to be an absolutely massive year for EV charging. We're going to head towards the situation they found with petrol stations. Don't know if you're aware, but cars came out in 1895. The first petrol station didn't happen until 1919. It was 25 years later. But then as the car numbers increased and it became more popular and people travelled further distances, they built extra petrol stations. And it reached a point in the 60s, 70s and early 80s where there were tens of thousands of petrol stations all over, everywhere you went. Little villages had just 2 pumps outside the post office. They were everywhere, and they got up to 30 or 40,000 petrol stations. Half of these were just 1 or 2 pumps. And then they found they weren't very competitive. So since then, what's been happening is the number of petrol stations has been falling really quite dramatically. And at the last count, we're now down to about 9,000. So we've come down from 30 to 40,000 down to 9,000. And 9,000 is working. You don't see huge queues at the petrol stations. You do see queues, peak times, but not huge ones. And the situation seems to be normal because, contrary to what EV haters say, not everyone goes to the petrol station all at the same time. We've all developed a pattern where we can go when we need to. We don't go every day and top up. We go once a week or just before we're going on a journey. And the situation works for us. And I think that the EV chargers are going to find the very same situation. We're going to put in masses and masses of them, and we'll end up with a nice stable EV structure which emulates the petrol station situation today, where when you want to charge, you'll be able to find somewhere, whether it's overnight or on a road trip, and it'll be a nice stable situation. Guess what? We're not there today. So keep moaning. It is changing, but it is slow, but we're getting there. Well, thanks for watching. I'm Dave. Well, thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to see more, please subscribe and click the notification bell so we can notify you next time we launch a video. And a massive thank you to all our Patreon supporters. It is your support that enables us to go out and make these videos for you. So thank you very much for your contribution. I'm Dave.